Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and as you see the table, got little Missy sitting up over here, cleaning herself, behaving herself, and we are looking at another one of these Nova or BattleTech player science fiction combat book game by Nova Games, produced around circa 1987. This is the Shadowhawk, the 2HD-2H Shadowhawk Battletech. The basis of these things, I've already would have posted the first two. So if this is your first one, we'll run it down a little bit. One of your wonderful subscribers donated these to the channel, and it requested specifically that I do some reviews on them. And like I've said in the past, I never saw these at the game store. I absolutely do not remember seeing them. And back in the day, like I said, I grew up in a small town outside of Des Moines, Iowa, but Des Moines is the capital of the state. And even though it's a significantly sized city, there was only one game store at that time, and it was Ivers. And he either got stuff or he didn't. And not all vendors can carry all products. And not all products reach all areas, too. There's something to consider as well. And I don't remember ever seeing them come up until many years later when I knew somebody else that kind of had some of these, but I never paid attention to them. And then a previous subscriber last year sent me a large batch of material, and these are in that batch, but I haven't progressed that far because I've been focusing on other stuff. And so when the other subscriber said, hey, I got these things, would you like to do them? And so I said, yeah, you want to send them to me? That's great. And these are great, and like the artwork, considering the late 80s artwork from BattleTech, these are pretty damn good. And they can be they're a little different because they're a mini game unto their own. Because it says back here, it says this book the book by itself is not a complete game. You must have at least one other book in the BattleTech series before you can start to play. And that puzzled me because when I first read that on the Locust version, I thought, what the hell? What the hell does that mean? My first inclination was you should have the rules, that you should have the tabletop board game rules for BattleTech before trying to play BattleTech, right? But then I start looking through these things, and the truth is, these are self-contained. You can learn to play basic BattleTech with this book, with two of them. Ideally, you and your opponent, each one would have your own, and you're going to play off each other. So in a way, it's kind of like one of them multi-choice card game or picture book kind of things. Maybe that's not quite the right way to put it, but it is definitely an instruction manual, including visuals, which is pretty good. And like I said, the artwork is really good stuff, considering what we were dealing with back in that era. So the gist of these things would be, you got your pilot card, and you have your stat card. So your Shadowhawk stat card. So here it says 36 armor points. Takes 30 points to shut down, so you have 30 points of heat available, and there's a spot to keep track of your heat. There's your maximum speed of 5. Your starting ammunition is 6 rounds for your missiles and 4 rounds for your autocannon. 4 rounds for the autocannon? Does that sound right? For a Shadowhawk? Current ammunition and missile autocannon. So you would keep track of what you're expending. And then you get down into your ranges. So you got range, we got category physical, weapons, and defense. Then we have maneuvers, punch, push, kick, laser high, laser low, wild swing, jump away, duck. And then we have the modifiers. I'm not sure what PG is. Console page. The page you turn to see the actual visual. Heat is the amount of heat. So to punch your opponent, you're going to develop 2 points of heat. And MRX is medium range conversion number and long range conversion number. Right on, see? So pretty much everything you need to know. And one of the things that really interests me in this, or this card stat, is that it reminds me of the early Battle Force, the little counters. If you looked at how the counter system worked, and I'm wondering if that's not where that's not where Battle Force, that component of Battle Force, evolved from this idea. and I, you know, without knowing the folks back at FAST in the day that would have had that answer, I couldn't say one way or another. And I suspect there may be one or two y'all along, you know, on the old hats there at at Catalyst Games that will frickin' know that answer. So yeah, copyright 1987, Nova Game Designs Incorporated. Copyright, artwork copyright 1987, Doug Schuler. All rights reserved, patented. So this booklet represents one character or mech in a Battletech series of science fiction combat games. Each mech in this series can interact with every other mech. Each has strengths and weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. And it tells you how to play, and then all goes on further in the back. So the instructions only cover about a page and a half, and it's pretty easy. And so it's going to tell you, for example, here is medium range jumping and firing. Tell your opponents to do only medium range except for orange or dodge. Add +1 to any red that scores the next turn. All right, and it gives you those specific stats, and that's that stuff on the back page. I was trying to figure out how that worked out. So you know, the only downside with these things when I printed them out is, you know, is that some of them, it seems like every other, so the front side of the page is upright. So this is correct, and this is upside down. So ideally this should have been pivoted around, and I know from personal experience that this is a thing that happens sometimes when you scan material. When you scan stuff and you save it, you don't pay attention to how the pivot on it. So sometimes when you scan it, before you save it, you need to take it to a picture editor and flip it and save it, so it's saved in the right damn direction. I have done this myself a number of times, so I kind of have that belief on how it goes. But other than that, between the visuals and the simple instructions, this is a great way to learn how to play Battletech, especially if you're a novice. I can't be without having the opportunity to ever play the Battletech card game that's coming out that people are talking about. I don't know that I will have any chance to do it in the near future. But the simplistic cards and stuff is kind of reminiscent of this sort of stuff. Simpler is better. Simpler works. These things can get quite complicated and convoluted without needing to. Some of us like complicated and convoluted. We need to have the literal pounds worth of instruction or manuals and rule books and crap like that. But for easy training, you know, and another beautiful thing about these things is, I suspect you could be at a college campus or on break in the service, in the wardroom, or in the barracks, and if you want to get, your friends are at the park, your family went camping, you and your cousins want to bang out, you bring a couple of these booklets along, and you don't need to dice. I don't see no dice. I'm not sure that there's dice rolls involved in this. I don't see any inclinations of thinking you need dice for this particular stuff. You just move you need something to represent your mech and a field. And so you move your mech, and then your other guy moves his mech, and so this is why when it says you just need one other BattleTech book, I think that's because Nova Games wanted you to support FASA as well as their product. But in my personal mind was that you'd want the basic rule book. It just kind of what makes me think that was what they meant when you should have at least one book. Well, yeah, kind of goes without saying, right? So like I said, these things are pretty neat, and I never got an opportunity to actually play them, obviously, because this is the first time I can honestly say that I've opened them up and looked at them in person. And yeah, I mean, you couldn't really ask for more. And then we got Mech Degradation. Yeah. Now this is some old rule stuff that was built in, because you go back to the very original BattleTech, salvage was a big thing. I harp on that occasionally. It's like the current era of BattleTech is more of this plug and play and just waste. Just there's no, we'll just build a new one. We lost half our units, we'll just replace them with new mechs. Well, that was much harder to do, and that was the whole point of one of the key points of the game system back in the day was that point, to be aware that you lose your mechs. That's why being dispossessed was touted as so bad, is you wanted to avoid that at all possibility. So we have this built right in called Mech Deterioration. Each time you start a new game with the same mech, subtract 1 from the mech shutdown number. After 10 games, you acquire a new mech with a full shutdown limit. The cost of experience points equal to the cost printed on the front of the mech stat card. So at the end of the day, what they're saying is that if you're in your mech's in a campaign, the longer the campaign, through attrition or through wear and tear, if nothing else, your mech is being abused, and so over time it degrades. And if you don't have the field equipment, if you don't, there's reasons why. If you look at some of the basic rules on repairing things like this, and the inclusion of support vehicles in the vehicle entourage for the Battletech stuff, coolant trucks, for example, they play a huge role, and there's a reason for having them. It's just like having the ammo carriers around. So if your mech depletes its ammo, you're in an engagement, you run out of ammo, and you're screwed until that engagement's over. You need to either retreat, i.e. your mech needs to disengage from the engagement and go to the rear to get replenished, or it needs to just sit it out with what it has. And that's when the really nitty-gritty gets interesting. But that works only for scenarios. But if you're looking at a campaign where your unit is sent to a planet and you're there for a goal, but your goal is going to take a couple, there's actually a couple steps you need to achieve, that's a campaign. And ideally, that means your mechs are in the field, and if they're in the field and they're away from your dropship support or field support, then what they have is what they have. And so attrition can make a difference in whether you can achieve the end goal or not, right? So if you only have X amount of ammo, learning when to fire that shit instead of just fire hosing it around is important. The clans, that was one of their biggest defects when they invaded the Inner Sphere, was this assumption that they could just endlessly hose everything because the conflict was going to be over in a matter of minutes. They weren't designed or built or patterned after the idea of durability and duration, and it cost most of them. And it took, they started to learn from that stuff, but it took time, and it really cost their effectiveness in the long run. So they came in with a huge juggernaut and then ground down. The houses just ground the shit out of them. Yeah, one-on-one, the clanners are going to trump the house. But overall, houses buried the clans. At the end of the day, that's what they did. They buried the damn clans. And if they had really ramped shit up, they could have done that. If all 5 houses had got together as a united front in force, sent the bulk of their line units forward, it would have been an entirely different conclusion to the clan invasion, right? I'm just pointing out that the clans 100 years later in the current era still have issues with this. They still do. They're not totally set up to operate in a long-term environment. And in part, this is one of the reasons why they're always at conflict among themselves, if nothing else. So, like I said, these are great, and there's 3 more to do. I only printed these 3 out for today, for this week, and we'll get to the other ones not too far down the road. But like I said, if you can get your hands on these things, they're great. The PDFs, I assume they're out there. I didn't Google them myself. If you're one of my subscribers, I have an email address attached to the channel. You can ask, and I can send you the copy of the PDFs I've got of these. And at that point, whatever you do with them is up to you. Until next time, I'm Rick. Little Missy sitting over there staring at the wall. Until next time, you guys have a great weekend.